بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So inshallah we're going to continue on with some reflections from some ayat that have been recited. In the first rak'ah of Salatul Isha today, Shaykh Abdul Ghaffar, he recited the ayah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu dukhulu fi silmi kaffah. O you who believe, enter into a silm entirely or completely. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And do not follow in the footsteps of shaitan. إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌ مُبِينٌ. For indeed he is a clear enemy to you. This verse, subhanallah, first and foremost is an address to you and I. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing you and I. Whenever we hear in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, we should pay attention. Why? Because what's coming next is addressing you and I, my dear brothers and sisters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us to enter into silm. What is silm? Okay, the mufassirin, the scholars of tafsir, those who dedicated their lives to understanding the Quran and teaching the Quran and explaining the Quran, from them Ibn Abbas, the great companion, radiyallahu anhuma, him and many mufassirin after him said that what is meant by silm here is Islam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in this verse that enter into Islam completely, entirely, and do not follow in the footsteps of shaitan. Why? Because he's a clear enemy for you. So the question that we should ask ourselves today is, what is this Islam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding us to enter into? What is this Islam? Islam, as we all know, my dear brothers and sisters, is of course submission. That's what Islam is. The Muslim is the one who submits. The Muslim is the one who submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, submits to the Sharia, submits to the system of Islam. And Islam is a comprehensive system, it's a comprehensive way of life. It's not simply the rituals that we think as long as you pray you're taken care of. No, Islam, as I said, is a complete way of life. And the truth is that we all sitting here today claim to be Muslim. It's a claim that we make. But what substantiates that claim? What's the proof of that claim? It's in how we live our life in accordance with the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's interesting in this verse, He doesn't just say, enter into Islam. He says, enter into Islam completely, entirely. Take this deen fully. Don't pick and choose. This is not a deen where you can pick and choose which parts of the deen you want to apply in your life. There's no half-hearted approach to Islam. Islam, you take it all. This whole deen is for us, my dear brothers and sisters. Yes, we can't choose, I'll follow this part of Islam, but this part of Islam, it doesn't sit right with me. This part of Islam is a bit too difficult for me. It doesn't work like that, my dear brothers and sisters. Allah is telling us to take this whole deen entirely and completely. So we are not people who compromise. Yes? From this verse we learn what? We're not people who compromise when it comes to our principles and our deen. And one of the tricks of shaitan is what? Shaitan will come and try to water down the deen. Yes, make parts of the deen seem not as important to you. Yeah, we hear often, namaz paro to bas bahut hai. And you pray your namaz and that's enough. And what's all this other part of Islam? You have to do this, you follow laws. No. You do what you want in your life, just namaz paro. No. And this is an attitude that goes against the fundamental principles of Al-Islam. Because we believe Islam has guidance for every aspect of our life. Yes, it governs the way society should run. It governs you and how you should be in your marriage. It governs the way you raise your children. It gives us direction on how you do business. All aspects of life we find guidance in Al-Islam, my dear brothers and sisters. And Islam, what Islam isn't. Yeah, it's not a shop where you go inside, you choose what you want and then you leave the rest and walk out. No. There's no picking and choosing, my dear brothers and sisters, in Islam. And this was the way of the prophets. Ibrahim alayhi salam is commanded to what? To leave his wife and his son in the middle of a desert. Does Ibrahim alayhi salam say, what kind of command is this? I can't do this, is asking too much from me. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he submitted. Ibrahim alayhi salam later on is asked to sacrifice his son. Does he say, this is too much? What kind of Islam is this? What kind of submission is this? No, he submitted. This was the way of the Anbiya, the companions like them. When the ayat were revealed that brought a prohibition to alcohol, yes, it happened in stages. The final ayat to be revealed, when Allah prohibited alcohol, yes, Anas, he says that people were drinking. And then they said, as soon as the ayat were revealed, throw it away, pour it away. We don't want anything to do with it. Why? Because it's prohibited now. Complete submission, there and then. No, actually, you know what, let me have a little bit later, and oh, we've been drinking this for so many years, it's too difficult to give up. That wasn't the way of the companions, my dear brothers and sisters. So we similarly must reflect on our submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are we from those who submit completely? Are we taking this deen wholeheartedly? Are we taking this deen in its entirety? Unfortunately, what we find, and let's be very honest, when it comes to many of us as Muslims, we will relegate Islam to what we do at home in our masajid when it comes to the prayer, etc. Yes, when it comes to how do we deal with others. Yes, when it comes to our financial dealings, when it comes to business. And unfortunately, again, we don't apply Islam there. And we're the first to cheat, take money from this person, fraud, all of these things, subhanAllah, we find within the Muslim community. We don't understand that Islam gives us guidance on how we interact, how we conduct our financial dealings. All of this, Islam gives us direction on. And you know, when you pick and choose this deen, and you pick and choose what you want to follow, you're actually what? Following then in the footsteps of shaitan. Because it was shaitan who was commanded to what? To prostrate to Adam alayhi salam, and he refused. Yes, and he was a believer. Shaitan believed in Allah, but when he was commanded to prostrate, he refused. Similarly, my dear brothers and sisters, when we refuse the commands of Allah, we're following in that footstep, in the footsteps of shaitan. And the truth is, you know, shaitan will come and whisper to us. Shaitan has many different tactics, many different techniques, many different tricks. Yes, for example, you hear a rumor. You want to go and discuss that rumor with your friend. And you know deep down you shouldn't discuss that. Why? Because this is gossip. Gossip is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like. This is haram. But shaitan will come to you and say, it's harmless. Harmless conversation you're having with your friend. This is from the tricks of shaitan. Yes, shaitan will use different tactics for different people. Sometimes shaitan will come and convince you that you're a good person. You pray 5 times a day. You know, if you're praying 5 times a day, then it doesn't matter how you dress. Yes, it doesn't matter how you do your business dealings. It doesn't matter about investments and all of these things. These things that you can do what you want. This is the trick of shaitan. Shaitan will trick you into thinking that, okay, you're praying, don't worry about it. For some people, shaitan will come and say, you know what, you're just committing a minor sin. As long as you avoid the major sins, it's not a big deal. Yeah, do some good deeds and it will take care of these little minor sins. Allah is Ghafoor, Allah is Rahim. This is the trick of shaitan. What happens is you start to then get used to the minor sins and then it goes on to the major sins. So this is the way shaitan works. We have to understand that shaitan has a plan in place. Yes, the story of Barsisa, which we don't have time to go into, but this is a story that you should all go and listen to. The story of Barsisa, how this great monk, and he ended up doing what he ended up doing. Yes, it's a story of how shaitan came, time after time. So my dear brothers and sisters, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and end on this, He says, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌ فَاتَّخِذُوهُ عَدُوٌ. Allah tells us in the Quran that shaitan is your enemy. So take him as an enemy. Take shaitan as an enemy. And when you have to take shaitan as an enemy, you must know your enemy. You must know the tricks that shaitan is going to use. Don't fall into the trap of shaitan. When shaitan comes and tells you that, you don't have to take this deen completely. You can pick and choose which parts of the deen you want to live by. No. As believers, we fully submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's true Islam, is when you fully submit to the creator of the heavens and the earth. And wallahi, my brothers and sisters, I know it's difficult. Yes, I know we all have our own challenges, we have our own weaknesses, but that's the struggle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see. He wants to see you striving and you struggling. And the truth is, this deen is beautiful. There is nothing better than living by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's system. When you live by the system of Al-Islam, there is nothing better than it. When you put the deen of Allah above your own whims and desires and your own ego and above the trends of society, and you say that actually I'm going to fully submit to Allah because I believe Allah knows what's best for me. I believe that this deen is what is best for me. My dear brothers and sisters, when you do that, you will taste the sweetness of Iman. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you that sweetness of Iman is when you put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. And and I'll end on this, one of the scholars of the past, he said, you know, if you want to see where you are with Allah, what is your ranking with Allah? Look at where you've put Allah in your life. How important is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your life on a daily basis? What's your connection like with Allah? If it's very weak, then that'll give you an indication of where you are with Allah. But if it's strong, then inshallah, this is a good sign that you are in high regards with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My dear brothers and sisters, this is the life that we want to live. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He grants us all true submission, and He grants us protection from the shaitan. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.